Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. In this video we are going to talk about part 2 of how I designed a coffee brand around a creator who talks about coffee in general. In the first part we talked about the strategy and how we would post content and the content pillars, and in the next part we will talk about more on the communication design and the visual design aspect of that brand. And for this one I've decided to combine two ideas, as the brand also was about stories and coffee. I took these two iconologies about chat bubbles, which is basically a storytelling in digital form or just stories in digital form, and coffee beans, and I decided to go ahead and use these coffee beans as bubbles and make this logo. Next, I decided the color palette for this brand and I went ahead with these 5 colors. The feedback I got for these colors is that we can limit the amount of colors we use in our brand and make it more robust. So I would recommend, if you are designing your brand, you can limit your color palette for at least for the primary colors to 2 to 3, and this is like the whole range for it. And one more tip for choosing colors is that you can name those colors which are relevant to the brand as well. So as you can see, the latte one is basically a lighter version, and a hot chocolate is more of a brown and a darker version of that same color. So next I decided the logo type, or basically the typography for this channel, and after researching much I decided that I wanted some Indian feeling to this brand. So I went ahead with this font called as Berkshire Swash. I felt that these specific extensions were very Indian in nature, and there was variation in the thickness, as you can see here and here, so which gave it a slant feel. And in the cafe culture, as I will show next, there's a lot of culture of slant chalk paintings, so that was conveying it very well. And the next, for body font in general, I wanted some less emphasized one, and this was a display font, so there was no extra weight for this Berkshire Swash. So I went ahead with another font which was similar to the first one, which was called Bhavuka, and this was more readable in smaller size also, because there was less confusion when it was in smaller size. Now I decided the tone and voice, and this is an important aspect. If you are designing communication for any brand, you can start with these questions, basically asking yourself, who is the audience? Is that audience an expert one in the field? So would that be okay if you use jargons, formality of that tone? If it's B2C, you can change the formality. Tone is basically the type of words we use in our text or in any form of conversation. And lastly, the intent. Basically the whole point of conversation is to tell a story, and for other brands, if they are early stage brands, that intent can be to share the philosophy of the brand. Lastly, then there needs to be a way for you to inform that high level thinking of tone and voice into day-to-day communications. This you can do by writing a piece of communication or just by writing some guidelines. Now most of the time, since this was very strong and opinionated brand, it was easier to give an example and people could replicate that. But in case of a subtler brand, you can write an example article or a copy, or in general some examples in different use cases like Instagram captions, Twitter and LinkedIn posts, so that other writers could replicate that and get a sense of the brand. Now in this case, I decided with a simple hack of replacing the verb, and which basically means that you use industry things related to coffee instead of regular words. For example, using like instead of telling interesting stories, you can use spilling some coffee beans. Instead of we will be posting regularly, or the new post is coming soon, you say new post is brewing. So stuff like that, like candid conversation is unfiltered talks. And sometimes when the guest is telling a story, instead of you saying it was a lovely story, you can say it was a savoring story. And basically you can use those types of words in the communication, or at least in the script, so that that brand tone and voice feels more consistent. Next, I took inspiration for the channel banner, which is basically the face of the channel when somebody visits. I took inspiration from basically the chalkboard art that comes on, that is there on various cafes, at least in Europe. It is very common in Europe, and that chalkboard is very famous visual style, and I wanted to replicate that on a channel. So I used that same font and made a channel banner. Basically, the analogy between these two is that it's the face and it invites the people inside, and that I needed that in the cover art, so I made it something like this. Next, for the channel elements, like basically the intro, outro, lower thirds, I wanted to be something which is related to coffee culture yet not actually coffee. So basically it needs to be subtle also. So I took inspiration from materials that are used for packaging coffee now, like for example paper, tissue papers, and even wrapping papers of sorts. So I took inspiration from that and decided to combine that with the coffee materials basically, and for that I just took some samples of different stained papers. So this also is analogous to color palette. So while using, you can limit these to 2 to 3. So I would recommend to use a darker tone for like contrast with a yellowish one and a lighter one, because yellowish one has that extra hue of yellow, and basically stains and the coffee ones are like more or less similar, and stains are very stark in like attention. So it's basically, to keep it subtle, you can use a darker tone with a lighter and something with a hue. So this you can use. So I sampled some textured papers, and from that I decided to fill the shapes or the containers with those textures, like something like this. And another one is something like this, where I used a coffee based paper at the background, and the foreground there's another paper which is like lighter one, and to create this contrast I used text. Next, I decided to design this templates for the social media, and I wanted it to be very hand-drawn, because like for example there are stains and stuff, but it was very visually like distracting. So I went it with only basic color fills which is again informed from our original color palette. I wanted to incorporate some sort of imperfections in this one. So as you can see, there is like the circle which is offset and stuff like that. And now as you can see, this is a good example of two fonts which are not same font, but at least go well together, like Bhavuka and this Berkshire font. And this one also, basically the same wave is like offset and put on like some other part of the wave is used as a line. So something like this you can do if you want to incorporate more of a brand. Like in this case, the imperfection part was the anchor in this one. So this was the visual design for it. Overall, if you are designing anything related to brand, after you have done the strategy part, it's important to again refer to the elements that define the brand, and not only the core elements, the stuff that is related to the brand itself. Like in this case, it was filter paper and imperfections. So these stuffs, like you have to really observe what is happening around the brand and what types of products and where they live in the environment, and you can use that source of inspiration to inform your visual design. So that's it for this video. If you like this video, please like and subscribe to this channel, and if you have any doubt, you can reach out to me. All my links are in the description, and you can also comment on this video. I'll get back to you on any doubts or suggestions. So thanks a lot for watching.